Anne Tiivas, OBE, has spent 40 years in child and adult protection work, specialising in sport for 20 years. She is chair of the UK-based international charity SafeSport International and the former director of the NSPCC Child Protection in Sport Unit in the UK. SafeSport International supports the capacity of sport to safeguard and protect all of its stakeholders, particularly athletes. Anne is a programme director of the International Olympic Committee's Safeguarding Officer Certificate course, and she represents SafeSport International on the Centre for Sport and Human Rights Advisory Council, FIFA's expert safeguarding group, and the ICOACHKIDS Global Movement Committee. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Good evening, Anne.
Thanks very much, Gary. Thanks for that introduction. It can't possibly be 40 years. I'm relying on the Clarins to keep things going. This is a whistle-stop tour. We only have 20 minutes really to try and go through the key priorities that we see for safe sport for the next 10 years. So I'll move on without further ado. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about SafeSport International for those of you who might not be familiar with what we do and how we work in partnership with others such as Sergio and the ICOACHKIDS program. And then we're going to look at what the current issues and priorities are, both in terms of policy, practice and research. And finally, we'll have a look at those priorities and see what the solutions may be, the ones that are emerging now and what we may see for the future. So for those of you who aren't familiar with SafeSport International, we are a UK-based international charity. Our job really is to help sport improve its capacity to make sure that everybody understands what safeguarding is about and understands what to do, whether they're a board member, a coach or an athlete. And we focus on three key areas of work in terms of capacity building. Firstly, it's the athlete voice, which is particularly important to us. We have a mantra which is nothing about us without us. And so we seek to ensure that athletes' voices, whether they're young people's voices or adult athletes' voices, are centred in all of the work that we do. We focus on research and evidence. We have a research committee which coordinates work in this area. And we have an education, training and consultancy committee. And that's particularly the latter two. We have a lot of crossover with the work that's being done through ICOACHKIDS. So in terms of our organisation, this is the front of our website, and it gives you just a flavour of some of the things that we might be doing currently. So for example, we're promoting the International Safeguards for Children in Sport and its website that launched this week. There are several hundred organisations now committing to take action to safeguard children in sport. We've also partnered on the iProtect programme, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later, which is a whole club approach to safeguarding. And also we're promoting upcoming events, and we hope that you will all join us at our next virtual conference in April next year. So we also made a call to action at our conference in April and in March, this year. Our conference in March focused entirely on athlete voice. And we had athletes presenting, comparing, sharing their research, and generally helping us all to model what an athlete voice being centred looks like. And we made this call to action, which I think is really important to reflect on. And again, we're talking about athletes of all ages, including children. Firstly, it's to see athletes as human beings first, to respect their rights, their voices, their perspectives, and to co-design safeguarding strategies with them. To start with those who are not yet visible, not yet included, and not yet heard, and in this way design from the margins in. That's really, really important to us. If you design a system just for the mainstream, it won't protect everybody. It will fail to protect everybody. But if you design from the margins in, you will then ensure that you safeguard everyone. And the other thing that we're working really hard on at the moment is creating this athlete network and coalition. Again, making sure that athletes are involved in everything that we do. We're building on the work that the athletes did at our conference to ensure that we can create an athlete committee and also find ways in which athletes can be involved at whatever level is suitable for them. So in terms of current trends and priorities, what are we seeing? So that involvement of the athlete voice, I think all of you will have seen recently, there's been a much greater movement of athletes starting to speak up for their rights, to talk about the issues that are important for them, including things like their mental health, and to involve people with lived experience of abuse in sport. They are the experts. It's really, really important that we hear the voices of athletes who experienced abuse as childhood because they can tell us exactly what it is that we need to do to make things better for them and to improve the experience of other children. For example, we did focus groups earlier in the year with athletes. And all of them told us that when they were children, they didn't know that they had any rights. Nobody ever explained to them what their rights might be in sport and how those rights could be realised. So we're also very, very keen on an evidence-based approach and having a greater emphasis on research, whether that's about the extent of abuse in sport, whether it's about the incidents, and also applied research. So we want things to be really, really practical and usable for people. So capacity building, both within and outside of sport, and that means bringing together people from different organisations to all work in the same direction rather than working separately. So bringing statutory agencies, child rights organisations, specialist survivor organisations, coaches, educators, and board members all thinking in the same direction. And some of the things that we're noticing at the moment is that there is a growth in the number of safe sport entities. And these come from a variety of different models, and I'll explain those to you in a moment. We need to see much better systems for readiness, response, and remedy for people reporting concerns. And that's for all of us. We all need to understand that if we're seeing a child in difficulty, that we all need to have confidence in that moment to know exactly how to respond and what to do and who to talk to. But also our systems need to be better to manage those situations much better with fair systems for everybody concerned, whether they're the person reporting a concern or the person who's had an accusation made against them. The other thing that's really important is that governance is improved. Safeguarding should be at the top of every organisation's risk registers, and we need to make sure that we're having risk assessments done for all of our activities so that we can make sure that we have the best possible environments for our young athletes to participate in. And that also means that we need to look at working better between sport and statutory agencies to make sure that we understand each other's roles and responsibilities and work more closely together. And one of the things that also we need to do is one of the things that SafeSport International is working on at the moment is to create international safeguards which are inclusive of everyone. At the moment, there are some good models of international safeguards for children in sport, but there's a big gap there in terms of safeguards for adults. There's only a few countries in the world that are taking action in that way. And that poses particular issues, particularly for talented young athletes who start to move up the pathway and start to move into adult sport. So we do need to make sure that we develop those inclusive safeguards that make sure everybody has a positive experience. So in terms of education and training, these are some of the things that we're starting to see. Over the last 2 years, nearly all training and education has been online, and that's also had some positives because it's made the ability to access training much more inclusive and accessible. We've seen massive developments with ICOACHKIDS, and I really commend you for the fantastic work that you've been doing and that you're continuing to expand that movement globally now, following the success of the European project. And one of the things that we've worked on together is the iProtect program, which is a whole club approach to safeguarding education and training. And the iCoachKids program is actually embedded within that program. And we'll be looking to see for the future how we can expand and improve to make sure that there is continuous professional development within that program. The other thing that's happening that's really, really important is safeguarding officer designated persons training. And that means having safeguarding officers in clubs, for events, at national level and at international level. And we're starting to see some high quality training coming out that supports that internationally. At the moment, UNICEF is trying to help us with, they've commissioned a piece of work which is looking at how we can have a consistent program for safeguarding officers and a framework that explains what the knowledge, skills and competencies are. I'm a program director on the IOC Safeguarding Officer course, and one of the things that we've ensured that is included in this brand new course this year is that athletes speak in every single module, and they also speak at the end of every module to summarise why their voice is so important. And the FIFA Guardians program is a free online program which has started with a basic safeguarding awareness course and now is developing the modules for the rest of the safeguarding officer role. And also we're seeing a really, really important shift in the need for board training to make sure that your boards are behind you and supporting the need to make sure that education and training is available to everybody in sport. Okay, so here are some of the examples. Obviously, you're all very familiar with the ICOACHKIDS program, and safeguarding is thoroughly embedded in that. And Sergio and I work on each other's boards and committees to make sure that we're joining up the dots and meeting the needs of our stakeholders. The Child Safeguarding in Sport program, which is a current European program, but the resources are available to everybody. We've been working with 6 countries to develop a whole country approach to safeguarding, and that includes the development of education and training, codes of conduct, but starting from a kind of government level and ministerial model and then working down. All of the resources are available on the Child Safeguarding in Sport website. It's the European Commission and Council of Europe EPAS program. So I would really commend you to have a look at that if you're looking at a whole system approach in your country. And the I Protect in Sport program, as I've mentioned, is really, really important. There's no other program at the moment where everybody, whether they're coaches, safeguarding officers, parents, or young people themselves, have the opportunity to access online learning together as a whole club and make a difference as a whole club. And we've just seen the launch of the new Safe in Sports website. I chair the advisory group for the International Safeguards for Children in Sport. And if you're not familiar with them, they're available in about 20 languages. The new website is now launched and will be continuing to develop. So if you want to make a commitment to know what you should be doing in terms of keeping children safe in your sports organisation, there's loads of guidance and information and help on the website. So thoroughly commend you to be signposted to that if you haven't seen it already. So the other things that we're seeing and the priorities for the future are to create safe systems. We don't have an equivalent of WADA and a model across the world for how safeguarding should be responded to. So what we have now is a really mixed model where we have organisations like the US Safe Sports Centre, which has very specific regulatory requirements that are enshrined within legislation, and they are tasked with dealing with cases for all of the Olympic and Paralympic sports in the States. We have others that are just focusing on managing reported concerns. They may be specialist services like the Sport Resolutions Safeguarding Service in the UK, or the newly formed Canadian service, which is being provided through their Sports Dispute Resolution Panel. And then we have organisations like those in the United Kingdom, like the Child Protection in Sport Unit and the Anne Craft Trust, that focus very much on capacity building and support. And some of these are based within sport organisations, some of them are based outside, and some of them are providing services into sport. But what we should expect to see in the next few years is a growth in these movements and services being provided across the world. There's a real push towards having coordinating bodies that bring in some independence as well, both to capacity building and decision making. I don't think we have a single perfect model in the world at the moment, and things are being created for different reasons in different countries. But do watch out and see what's happening in your country. So these are just some of the examples, and you can look at these. The slides will be shared with you. You can look at them at your leisure, but these are some of the many examples of different sport entities happening across the world. We've just heard that FIFA are announcing the outcome of their consultation programme and are looking to develop an emerging system that will deal with the really urgent needs to address concerns across the world where there are no systems in place. Okay, I've just been reminded that I'm running over. So other things we're seeing is that sport is increasingly being caught up in statutory agency reviews and commissions, but also increasingly where cases, safeguarding cases do arise within sport, they are being subject to internal inquiries as well. And these are just some of the current and recent examples. Just highlighting again the athlete voice. So increasingly, we're seeing the athlete voice reflected in media coverage around the world. And we know that safeguarding cases are happening all over the world. We're also now seeing a mobilisation of athlete voice and advocacy centres. And again, you can look these up at your leisure. And we're also, as I said, creating an athlete voice committee and ensuring that athletes are represented in all of our work. There's a fantastic new piece of research that's come out which talks about the prevalence of abuse in sport, but it's also comparing it with abuse outside of sport. And this is looking at 6 European countries. It's a fantastic piece of research led by Edge Hill University, but involving all 6 countries and world athletics and UK athletics. So again, I would commend you to have a look at that research to be up to date in your thinking. We have new networks emerging, such as the International Research Network on Violence in Sport, coordinated from Belgium, our own research committee, Edge Hill University's Centre for Child Protection and Safeguarding in Sport, and the Masters in Sport Integrity at the University of Leuven. Come together and hear more about these next April. We really welcome all of you coming and joining us. The coaching will be represented, we hope, across all of the strands of the conference. So please come and register for the SafeSport International Conference, and our contact details are available for you on social media and through our website. So that's it from me. I will welcome if there have been any questions, and apologies for overrunning.
And there's no need to apologise at all. Thank you so much for sharing such important messages, initiatives, and organisational work that is going on worldwide. And yet again, such a reminder of the importance of the athlete's voice being heard too. I guess we have time for one question. You spoke about the importance of co-designing safeguarding strategies. What do, or even what can these conversations look like? And what would your recommendations be for clubs and youth sport organisations starting these conversations?
Okay, so there's some really good practice guidance out there from organisations like Voices, Truth and Dignity. They've produced guidance on how to involve athletes who've been affected by abuse in the past. It gives you lots of helpful information and tips. A lot of it, athletes will just say, ask us, invite us, and we'll contribute. We're really, really keen to contribute with you and take your lead from what the athletes say is important for them. But that doesn't matter whether it's young people or whether it's older people. A really good example, for example, is the Lawn Tennis Association in the UK is just starting to create young safeguarding officer roles, because they've realised that actually young people are much more likely to talk to their peers than they are to us old fogies. I speak for myself. So asking and looking at what good practice ideas there are out there. The Child Protection in Sport unit in the UK has got some free e-learning on its website about how to involve children and young people. So the CPSU website is a really, really helpful set of resources.
Thanks, Anne. And just a reminder to our audience members of some of the links that Anne shared there. So there is thecpsu.org.uk, there is safeinsport.org, and there is safesportinternational.com. Please be sure to check out all of those resources and insights that Anne alluded to today. For now, Anne, thank you for sharing your evening with us. I'm sure we'll be catching up soon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.